I'm a time traveler. It wasn't a meteor that ended the dinosaurs. My name is Dr. Elian Rhodes, and if anyone finds this, I need you to believe every word I'm about to tell you, no matter how absurd, no matter how far-fetched or insane it might seem. I am a scientist, a physicist by trade, but what I witnessed, what I survived. It doesn't belong in any textbook or journal. It belongs in a nightmare. Time travel wasn't just theoretical anymore. That's the part you need to understand. We cracked it, my team and I. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't some B-movie nonsense. We built the machine. We tested it. We sent drones, animals, and then people. We retrieved them all, alive, mostly unscathed. So when the opportunity came to become the first human to witness the end of the Cretaceous period, the infamous extinction event, I volunteered. Not out of arrogance, but wonder, curiosity. A dream I'd had since I was a kid, watching documentaries of towering sauropods and stalking theropods. I wanted to see them. Not their bones. Not their plastic replicas in museums. I wanted to breathe the same air they breathed, hear their calls, walk among them, even if they never knew I was there. In hindsight, I was walking into hell with my eyes wide open. I arrived at the facility 3 hours before the scheduled jump. The research complex was buried somewhere in the Sonoran Desert, off-grid, no cell signals, no external data lines. Just us, our calculations, and the most powerful time displacement engine ever constructed. We called it Eos Chronos, the dawn of time. The machine stood like a cathedral of wires and chrome. Its core was a pulsating sphere, supercooled tungsten alloy wrapped in liquid crystal conduits and stabilized within a gyroscopic magnetic ring. It hummed faintly like a deep breath held eternally. The field it generated could bend space-time around a bubble. Small at first, no more than a meter in diameter. But over the past 5 years, we'd expanded it enough to send humans back weeks, then months, then decades. How? The breakthrough came when we figured out how to anchor a subject's consciousness in a stasis state while their physical form traveled. We weren't just moving meat through the time stream. We were maintaining continuity. Perception. Memory. It wasn't time travel in the way H.G. Wells imagined it. It was better. We'd already sent a technician back to 1945 and brought him home. He described it like stepping into a photograph. Only everything moved. Everything lived. No paradoxes, no butterfly effects. The universe, as far as we could tell, absorbed the disturbance like ripples in a pond. So we asked, why not go further? I remember the final meeting before the launch. There were 12 of us in the briefing room. Myself, Dr. Mara Singh, who handled chrononavigation, Dr. Casper Lin, our robotics and AI specialist, and the heads of biology, engineering, and environmental science. General Thorne was there, of course, the project's military liaison. He said nothing, just watched. Dr. Singh pulled up the coordinates. Time target, 66 million BCE. Late Cretaceous. Approximately 1 week before the Chicxulub impact event. The plan was simple. Observe, record, return. I would spend a maximum of 6 days in the past, using my personal cloaking field, a cutting-edge piece of tech that mimicked ambient temperature, texture, and optical properties to render me functionally invisible to most organic life. I carried a neural link camera embedded in my retinas, a sample harvesting toolkit, and a fail-safe return trigger. Should anything go wrong, the fail-safe would immediately yank me back through the tether. I wasn't afraid. I should have been. The first time we powered Eos Chronos at full capacity, the entire complex dimmed. Not a flicker, a dim. Like reality itself took a breath and waited to see what we'd do. The sphere at the heart of the machine, the time core, spun at precisely 4,320 revolutions per minute, encased in a magnetic suspension field that bent gravity itself. It looked like a gyroscope dipped in mercury, humming with cold white-blue light. Not heat, cold. You could feel it when you got close, like standing next to something that didn't belong on Earth. The theoretical physicists among us said it was simple quantum field compression, a precise excitation of space-time localized within a gravity well created by the rotating core. The engineers said it was a miracle that it didn't explode. We had two things that made it work: the chronobubble generator and the temporal anchor. The chronobubble was the field that encased the traveller, me, and kept my mass, molecular stability, and entropy rate fixed against the flow of time. Without it, you'd either unravel or age 100 million years in an instant. The temporal anchor was our tether, a micro-thin filament of quantum resonance frequency that synced the traveller's location with Eos Chronos. That tether was everything. Without it, you were gone, forever. No signal, no return. Our early trials were cautious. Drones first, simple, camera-equipped, environmentally shielded. We sent them back 2 minutes, 5 minutes, then 1 hour. They always returned intact. Their footage was time-stamped and flawless. Then we went bigger. We sent a lab rat. It returned within 2 minutes, disoriented, but alive, heart rate elevated, but otherwise stable. Eventually, we worked up to a dog, then a chimp. All came back, no visible trauma, no biological mutations, nothing wrong. And then we went human. Dr. Felton and I volunteered to be the first. We sent him back 5 hours. He walked around the compound, observed a meeting we had all just lived through, then returned with exact recall. His clothes were different, and his skin carried faint static charges for several hours. But otherwise, perfect. After that, the board greenlit the Chrono Jump expansion program. We ran trials to the 1800s, the 1500s, then further, carefully. Always with the tether, always with exact retrieval timing. When we hit the Jurassic, we had to make environmental modifications. Higher oxygen levels, unstable flora, larger fauna. That's when we developed the adaptive camouflage suit. It was a marvel. A full-body nanosynthetic layer that regulated temperature, absorbed light, deflected minor impacts, and adapted on a cellular level to surrounding terrain. In short, it made you invisible and untouchable to anything that wasn't looking too closely. I wore it during trial simulations. It felt like standing inside liquid armor. Weightless, seamless. I could blend into a wall and vanish. Perfect for the Cretaceous. We ran one final test the week before my scheduled jump. We dropped a probe to 66 million BCE, tethered for only 5 minutes. It came back with foliage samples, preserved leaves with cellular structures unknown to science. The air it brought back was rich, floral, heavy with pollen and oxygen. It smelled raw, like Earth when it was young and unspoiled. We found spores that had no modern equivalent, soil with strange trace elements, a beetle-like creature fused into one of the probe's landing arms, something with crystalline wings and no eyes. It was clear, this was going to be the most valuable expedition in human history. I didn't sleep the night before launch. I just stared at the tether connection, running my fingers over the soft, warm conduit that linked me to the present. My lifeline. Mara came to see me in the prep chamber. "Don't touch anything unless you're sure it won't bite you," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I tried to make a joke. "You make it sound like Jurassic Park." "Just remember," she said, "the meteor impact is scheduled for day 7. You must return before then. No delays, no heroics. If something goes wrong, use the fail-safe." I nodded. But I wouldn't need it. We were prepared. So I thought. I stood in the pod chamber as the countdown began, wrapped in my camouflage suit with the anchor embedded in my spine, the neural link humming quietly behind my ears. I remember the feeling, the light dimming, the world going quiet, like a vacuum pulling at my bones, like time itself leaned in and whispered my name. Then, white. Silence. Cold. And then I was standing on the edge of a riverbank when time spat me out. The moment of arrival was like being born into chaos. Not pain, but overwhelming presence. Every sound was too sharp, every colour too saturated. My breath caught in my throat, thick with oxygen. The air wasn't just fresh, it was dense, wet with life and spores. It clung to me like syrup. Trees towered around me, not like modern trees, but ancient titans, ferns and cycads the size of cathedrals, their leaves broad and dripping with dew. The ground trembled slightly beneath my boots, a low, distant rumble rolling like thunder across the forest floor. It was real. We'd done it. I fell to my knees, letting my gloved fingers dig into the warm, spongy soil. It pulsed faintly with insect life and root structures unlike anything I'd ever studied. My HUD lit up with data. Atmospheric readouts, terrain mapping, flora classification. I blinked twice to initiate recording. Chronologue, Day 1, I said aloud. Arrival confirmed. Location, Western Hemisphere. Approximate coordinates match modern-day Yucatan Peninsula. Environmental status, stable. No immediate threats. Visibility, limited due to foliage density. No large fauna in visual range. My voice trembled with awe. I stood slowly, surveying the horizon through a small clearing. A herd of hadrosaurs, massive duck-billed herbivores, grazed in the distance, their movements slow and deliberate. One lifted its head and let out a bellowing call that echoed across the valley. God, they were real. Flesh and blood. I felt tears sting my eyes behind the visor. The first 3 days were everything I'd hoped for. I kept to a strict schedule, mapping, recording, collecting samples of plant life and soil. The camouflage suit adapted seamlessly to the terrain. Small creatures passed me without reaction. Even a curious raptor that trotted within arm's reach didn't notice me. The suit worked. My neural camera logged terabytes of data. I'd captured footage of nesting pterosaurs, a stealthy ambush by a pack of dromaeosaurs, and even what appeared to be a proto-flowering plant species previously unknown to science. I documented everything. At night I slept in short bursts, resting beneath a web of vines high in the canopy. The nights were loud, alien chirps, droning calls, deep bellows in the far dark. And always, always in the sky, the object. The meteor. It hung above like a bruised pearl, pale, distant, slowly growing larger. By day 4, it was undeniable. I could see the tail now, a faint shimmer, like the blurred edge of a flame visible even in daylight. I stared at it longer than I should have. Something about it made my chest feel tight. But I told myself it was just nerves. Then things started to change. Day 5, I awoke to silence. The jungle that had been a chorus of life was quiet. Still, even the insects were gone. My suit's sensors picked up fluctuations in air pressure, minor but unusual. The clouds above were moving differently, as if tugged by invisible threads. I climbed to a ridge for better visibility. That's when I saw the hadrosaur herd again. They were running. Not walking, not grazing, stampeding. I scanned behind them. No predators, no fire, no visible threat, but they ran as if pursued by death itself, crashing through trees, bellowing in panic. I watched one trip and fall. The others didn't stop. They ran until the ground grew still again and silence fell once more. That night, I didn't sleep. Day 6. The meteor stopped. I stared up at it through a canopy gap just before dawn, rubbing my eyes to make sure I wasn't imagining it. It no longer grew larger. It simply hovered. Still. Too still. I zoomed in using the neural HUD. The edges of the meteor were wrong, too smooth, too symmetrical. I enhanced the image. It wasn't a meteor. It was built. A smooth metallic surface, geometric panels, lights, flickering lights. Panic hit me like a physical blow. I scrambled back into the jungle, heart hammering in my chest. At noon, the first of them came down. They fell like stars, burning streaks of white that screamed through the sky, crashing in distant valleys, dense forests, open plains, not fireballs, not debris. Crafts. Massive biomechanical constructs, some shaped like beetles, others like serpents, and still others that defied any natural form. From them emerged beings. I watched through a high ridge as the first stepped into the light. 3 stories tall, half metal, half sinew, glowing eyes set deep in a face that had no symmetry, no humanity. Their bodies rippled with shifting armor plates and exposed muscle like tendrils, twitching with heat. They moved with curiosity at first, sampling soil, plucking plants, even lifting small animals and dissecting them on the spot. Then one picked up a juvenile ceratopsian. It stared at it, tilted its head, then crushed it in its fist. The screams began not long after. I watched the sky burn. By midday, there were at least a dozen craft scattered across the horizon, each resting like tumours on the surface of this ancient world. The jungle shuddered beneath their arrival. The plants, the animals, they knew. Everything knew. This wasn't some passive observer or exploratory probe. This was invasion. I stayed high in the trees, my camouflage suit blending seamlessly into the thick foliage. I didn't move for hours, only watched as the first true massacre began. The biomechanical giants weren't here to study. They weren't here to communicate, they hunted. The first kill I witnessed was a juvenile Tyrannosaurus. A beautiful scaled creature, not yet full grown, perhaps 3/4 the size of the adults. It roared in challenge at one of the beings, its voice defiant, primal. The alien didn't flinch. It responded with something like a pulse, an emission of sound or energy that staggered the Rex mid-step. Then it moved. Fast. Too fast. The thing dashed forward in a blur and ripped the dinosaur in half like it was made of paper. I vomited behind my faceplate. I kept watching. 2 more creatures joined the first, laughing. Yes, laughing. Their vocalizations weren't mechanical, they were disturbingly organic, grotesquely joyous. They tossed the pieces of the T-Rex back and forth, then incinerated them with some kind of plasma burst that left a molten crater in the earth. It wasn't just killing, it was sport. Over the next several hours, I moved from site to site. My HUD marked 12 confirmed landing zones. All had similar patterns, initial scanning and collection, followed by bloodshed. The local megafauna never stood a chance. Ankylosaurs fell beneath energy blades that carved through armor plating like butter. Packs of raptors were driven into gorges and obliterated with explosive charges that left nothing but twitching limbs. Even the great sauropods, towering long necks that shook the earth when they moved, were no match. The aliens would swarm them, fire precise kinetic blasts into their joints, then dismember them like children tearing apart dolls. I recorded everything. I don't know why. Some part of me believed the footage would prove this wasn't just a hallucination, that someone someday would see what I saw and understand. This was not natural. This was not fate. The dinosaurs did not go extinct by accident. They were erased. By dusk, I had to face a choice. I'd set my return trigger for day 7. That was the original plan. Come back before the Chicxulub impact. Deliver the samples. Report the findings. But this wasn't the world we expected. This wasn't a meteor. It was a ship, a station, a floating construct the size of a city, orbiting in perfect stillness, just outside the stratosphere. The objects falling from it weren't debris. They were soldiers. Weapons. I checked the data logs again. My HUD's long-range scan confirmed it. The object hadn't moved since its deceleration. No gravitational arc, no burn trajectory. It had stopped intentionally. This was no extinction event caused by a random rock from space. This was execution by design. And I was the only one who knew. I activated the return trigger. Nothing happened. The failsafe blinked red. Anchor not found. Temporal link lost. My stomach dropped. I tried again and again. Hard reset. Manual override. An anchor not found. Panic crept in, thick and choking. I screamed, punching the failsafe panel on my wrist, cursing the machine, the calculations, the goddamn meteor, and then I saw it. In the far distance, rising slowly from the jungle, a second object. A new one, massive, heavier than the others. It descended not in a fall, but with purpose, smooth, deliberate. It wasn't shaped like the others. It was cylindrical, monolithic, the size of a mountain. And it was headed for what I now knew was the Chicxulub Basin. The cylinder touched down with no seismic quake, no shockwave. It simply landed as if the earth had consented. I watched from a high ridge several miles away, heart hammering in my chest. The jungle around me was smothered in unnatural silence again. No birds, no insects. Even the wind had stilled. The planet knew. I activated full magnification on my HUD and zeroed in on the structure. It dwarfed everything. Taller than any human-made building. Its surface was matte black, but alive, pulsating with veins of violet light that spiraled like a living circulatory system. At its base, spindly tendrils rooted into the earth, boring down like reverse lightning. They didn't shake the ground, but they were doing something. The top of the cylinder opened in segments like a blooming flower. From within, a humming sphere rose, suspended in a thin halo of gold energy, its core flickering like a miniature sun. The machine was activating. And I could feel it, not through vibrations or sound, but in my bones, my blood. It was as if the very timeline I stood in had become unstable. My camouflage suit flared red with error notifications. Atmospheric readings spiraled off chart. Radiation, electromagnetic pulses, dimensional distortion. My anchor hadn't failed on its own. This thing was severing time. I started moving. I ran, slipping down the mossy ridge, sprinting through foliage that now wilted around me in strange geometric patterns. Leaves curled in spirals, branches twisted into impossible loops. The jungle warped the closer I got to the machine. But I had to see it, I had to record it, I had to know. 3 miles out, I found the first dead zone. An entire section of rainforest miles wide turned to glass. Not ash, not rubble, glass, trees frozen in place, fossilized mid-motion, birds and reptiles flash-burned into shimmering crystal statues. And worse, some of them moved, their forms flickering as if trapped between 2 frames of reality. My suit barely filtered the distortions. My vision swam. I tasted metal and ozone. I felt like my bones were vibrating. The closer I got, the worse it became. At one point, I thought I was standing still, only to look down and realize I was walking backwards, my feet retracing steps I hadn't taken. My body didn't feel like my own. Time was collapsing. 1 mile from the cylinder, I saw them again, the giants. But they were different now, less biological. Their limbs were stretched, elongated, their features smeared like oil in water. Some of them hovered inches above the ground, others phased in and out, glitching like corrupted video. They didn't laugh anymore. They sang, low harmonic sounds that resonated with the pulses of the machine, and around them, the earth died. Not exploded, not burned, died. Grass turned white, rocks bled liquid light, even the sky shifted color, turning lavender with streaks of green. They weren't just killing life. They were rewriting physics. And still, at the heart of it all, the sphere rose higher. Its light became impossible to look at. My HUD blanked out entirely. That's when I knew. This was the impact event. Not a rock, not a comet, not an accident. This machine was the weapon. This was the extinction. I turned and ran. My legs screamed, my lungs burned. I stumbled over roots, scrambled through vines, slipped in thick mud. I didn't know where I was going, I just ran. Behind me, I felt the wave building. Not sound, not light. Everything. Ha-ha. It started at the horizon, a ripple that turned the world upside down, trees lifted from the ground and hung weightless, clouds inverted, colours inverted. The sound of the jungle slowed like a dying tape deck. The shockwave hit. It didn't explode. It unmade. Reality tore in layers, peeling back like paper soaked in oil. I saw stars where sky should be. I saw things moving through the tear, massive shapes writhing in the space between time. And I felt my anchor reconnect. For a brief, miraculous second, my failsafe glowed green. Temporal link stable, window open. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I slammed my palm against the return trigger. White. Silence. Too cold. The return wasn't like the departure. There was no brilliant flare of light, no awe-inspiring tunnel of starlit motion. There was just nothing. For a moment I was suspended in a void where even thought felt muffled. No sensation, no orientation. A deafening silence that pressed against my skull. Then, snap. Like being dropped back into my own skin, I hit the steel floor of the chronolab with a thud. I gasped. My body convulsed with the weight of gravity and the sheer presence of now. The suit's internal systems flickered back to full function. HUD re-engaged, biosigns returned, temporal readings leveled. I was back. I stumbled upright. The air smelled different, dry and artificial, the way only recycled laboratory air does. I expected cheers, a team of engineers, scientists, Dr. Koji's face lit with triumphant relief. But there was no one. "Control, this is Rhodes," I croaked, my throat raw. "Temporal jump successful. Repeat, jump successful. Do you copy?" Silence. I tried again. Recalibrated the comms, checked the time readout. Year 2025. Date, October 17th. Time, 8 hours, 32 minutes, and 17 seconds. Perfect. Exact moment I'd left. But still, no response. Then I looked around the lab. Something was off. Dust. Thick dust covering every surface. Loose papers scattered, screens cracked, a thin layer of grime over the control console. The once sterile room was in disarray, as if abandoned for months. Or longer. I tore off the helmet and took a breath. Still air, no decay, no rot, but neglect, like someone left in a hurry and never returned. My heart pounded. I sprinted down the corridor to the observation deck. The doors opened with a groan of disuse. Outside, the facility's garden, once pristine and regulated, was overgrown. The hedges were wild. Grass had pushed up through the concrete paths. I checked the internal chronometer again. October 17th, 2025. Correct, but wrong. "Hello?" I shouted. My voice echoed too long. I ran to the lab's security console. It flickered to life under my touch, sluggish and unresponsive. Most systems were corrupted. Logs were missing. The last recorded activity. March 2nd, 2024. A full year and a half before my departure. Impossible. My return window was precisely calibrated, a 7-day loop. I hadn't been gone a year. I hadn't been a sound behind me. I spun around. The hallway lights dimmed, then flared back to life. For a split second, I thought I saw a shadow at the end of the hall. Tall, not human. Gone before I could focus. I turned back to the console and pulled up external surveillance, what little still worked. And there it was. The sky. It was wrong. A faint shimmer hovered high above the horizon, not a cloud, not pollution. A shape. Pale, orbital, unmoving. I zoomed in with what remained of the facility's telescopic lens. And my heart froze. It was there. The same object. The meteor that wasn't a meteor. Still in orbit. Still watching. It followed me. I sat in the wreckage of what used to be my world, staring at the pale disk, suspended in the sky. It hadn't moved. Not an inch. My brain struggled to process what that meant. If it was the same ship or the same species, it suggested one of two things. Either I hadn't just returned to the wrong time, or I had brought something back with me. Or worse. I'd never left it behind. The idea made my skin crawl. I needed answers. First, I searched the chrono lab. My keycards still worked, at least in some places. The lower levels were sealed off, emergency lockdown protocols blinking red. The higher levels were mostly intact, though dust-choked and haunted by silence. I found remnants of the project scattered through labs and offices, old experiment logs, broken equipment, personal effects left behind like the people had simply vanished. A coffee cup on a desk, a lab coat still draped over a chair, even someone's glasses on the floor, cracked as if stepped on. I powered up the mainframe using backup batteries. Took nearly an hour. When it booted, I dug through the data like a man possessed. The timeline didn't make sense. According to the internal logs, the lab had shut down abruptly on March 2nd, 2024, during a routine power test. No catastrophic failure, no radiation leak, just a blackout. Then nothing. No updates, no news, no communications from the outside world. As if the facility had slipped through the cracks of time and been forgotten. I checked for broader signals, internet, news networks, satellites. There was nothing. At first, I thought it was just the lab. Then I got into the emergency broadcast channels. That's when I heard it. Sss. If anyone is receiving this, do not attempt to return to major cities. Evacuation protocols have failed. Quarantine zones have been compromised. Repeat, do not. The voice cut off into static. I cycled through more frequencies, but the pattern was the same. Fragmented warnings, looped automated messages, mentions of sightings in the sky, unidentified aerial objects, entities descending in the weeks after the power grid collapse, sporadic attacks. Then, silence. I leaned back from the terminal, pulse pounding. This wasn't just a malfunction of the return coordinates. I had come back to a changed Earth. Somehow the machine, the planet killer, had left a scar. Maybe the jump destabilized our time stream. Maybe exposure to the anomaly corrupted the calibration. Or maybe they followed me back. I checked the facility's motion sensors. At first, nothing. Then a ping. Then two. Movement in Sector 3, B, old storage. I pulled up the grainy camera feed and froze. It was me. Or something wearing my face. It stood in the corridor, silent, unmoving. No gear, no camo suit, no comms. Just me. Naked, expressionless, eyes black as void. Then it smiled, and the feed went dead. I ran, down the halls of my own creation, chased by a version of myself that shouldn't exist. Each footstep echoed too loud, each shadow held too much. My breath came in ragged bursts as I reached the weapons locker, half expecting it to be stripped bare. It wasn't. I grabbed the standard issue plasma torch and a compact sonic flare, primitive against what I'd seen in the past, but better than nothing. Sector 3. B was down 2 levels. I moved carefully, hugging the walls. No more motion pings, no more camera feed. The system had fried after the doppelganger appeared, as if even the lab's electronics were afraid to witness it. At the stairwell, I paused and listened. Breathing. But not mine. It was wrong, too steady, too controlled. I edged down one step at a time. Halfway to 3B, I saw it. Standing at the bottom of the stairs. Still. Smiling. It wore my face, but its eyes were like polished obsidian, reflective, not receptive. Its skin was almost too perfect, flawless, ageless, but off, synthetic, like a 3D render of me brought to life. "Who are you?" I demanded. It cocked its head. "You, but better." Its voice was mine, but hollow. I raised the flare and fired. The burst of sonic energy slammed into the thing's chest. It staggered, fell, then rose again, grinning. "Why fight it?" it asked. "You were chosen." Chosen. The word echoed in my skull like a curse. I fled. I didn't care where to. I just needed to put walls between us. Doors. anything. I slammed the emergency containment seal behind me and headed to the backup generator chamber. If that thing was a temporal fragment, then it had to be tied to the same disturbance that brought me back wrong. That meant it was unstable. I might be able to sever it with an electromagnetic pulse, like erasing a corrupted file. I pulled the override switch. The chamber lights flickered to full. Then I saw them. More of them. 4 figures, all me. But each one different. One with burns across its face, one without a mouth, one whose hands ended in jagged metal spines, and one that had no eyes, just bleeding sockets. They stared at me in silence. Then the mouthless one screamed. I activated the pulse. The room shuddered. A wave of blue light tore through the chamber, bending everything with a deep, vibrating hum. The figures screamed or tried to, and vanished like shadows hit with daylight. Gone. I collapsed, drenched in sweat, body shaking. This wasn't a glitch in the machine. It was me. I was the infection. Every time Jump leaves a trace, a fracture, a copy, and in the chaos of the past, the raw temporal instability around that alien machine, I had fractured 1,000 times over. And now the pieces were bleeding through. Somehow, the aliens knew that would happen. I remembered what I saw before I left. Those shapes in the rift, watching, waiting. They didn't just kill the dinosaurs. They broke time itself. And I brought that fracture here. The fractures weren't isolated. The further I explored the facility, the more I saw the signs, slivers of timelines bleeding into each other like oil and water refusing to mix. I stepped into a hallway, and for a split second it was full of people, scientists, lab techs, my team, all talking, laughing, moving. Then, gone. Like ghosts caught in a loop. Sometimes the walls were different too, older, newer, scorched. I passed one door that led not to the storage wing, but to a cratered desert under a black sky. That one never showed up again. At the core of the facility, behind 6 layers of biometric locks and quantum encryption, I found what I didn't even know existed. Ruin protocol. Do not engage unless breach is verified. It was buried under the deepest system archives, a hidden directive buried by Dr. Koji himself. I had to bypass 3 self-erasing barriers to access it. I didn't like what I found. A contingency for me. Or more precisely, for what I might become. It was a theoretical scenario. A time traveler exposed to alien-induced temporal corruption returns to the present with molecular instability. The code named the phenomenon Event Echo. Symptoms: localized temporal distortions, multiplicity anomalies, apparitional time phantoms, breach echoes, doppelgangers, global reality flux. If the condition escalated to uncontainable, the Ruin protocol would activate. Containment would no longer be viable. The only solution? Detonation of a temporal null bomb within the infected subject's immediate space-time zone. Translation: kill the patient and sever the affected branch of time. And a localized reboot. I stood there, numb. Koji knew. He knew what might happen. That the experiment might go too far. That I might come back. Wrong. Okay, the files included footage. Encrypted, distorted logs Koji had buried alongside the protocol. I decrypted one. It was him. Hair unkempt, eyes hollow, speaking into the camera with a flat voice. If you're seeing this, Rhodes, it means you came back. And it means we failed. You need to understand, this isn't about dinosaurs. This isn't about science. That machine you found? The thing that erased the Cretaceous? It wasn't a weapon in the way we understand weapons. It was a correction. A purge. You weren't supposed to see it, none of us were. I saw what followed you. I watched them split out of you like rot. You're not whole anymore. And if you're not whole, you can't be trusted to stay. So do it, push the button. End it. I backed away from the console. The null bomb was real, located below the sub-basement in the facility's now sealed biohazard isolation chamber. A kill switch for the future. I didn't want to believe it, that I had brought the apocalypse in my cells, that I was now a carrier of something worse than death. But the world was already dead. I'd seen no living people, no signs of survival, just echoes, broadcasts, and that thing still watching from orbit. Maybe they knew I wouldn't push the button. Maybe they were waiting. The elevator to the sub-basement groaned under its own age as I forced it online. Every floor down felt like a descent into a grave I had dug with my own hands. The doors opened to darkness. Total. The lights flickered reluctantly when I rerouted power, the hallway ahead lit up in sections like something crawling away just out of view, one room at a time. The biohazard isolation chamber sat at the end. I passed shattered glass, scorch marks, bloodstains. Everything down here told a story of panic and failure. And then I reached it. A vault door, 10 inches thick, reinforced with neutron shielding. It hissed open. Inside, the null bomb waited. It wasn't what I expected. No warhead, no reactor core. It looked like an orb of polished obsidian suspended in an anti-gravity field, surrounded by rings of rotating light etched with shifting alien glyphs. Not human tech. No wonder Koji sealed it. He hadn't built this. He'd found it. Just like I had found them. The control panel glowed as I approached. It recognized my biometric signature immediately. One button. One final command. Activate Ruin Protocol. The system waited. I didn't press it. I stood there for a long time, hands trembling. Could I really do this? End what was left of me, and possibly sever every version of me that had splintered through time? Was that the right call? Or exactly what they wanted? Behind me the lights flickered. I turned slowly and saw me. But not fractured, not smiling. This one was terrified. You can't do it, he whispered. I aimed the flare. Another echo. He shook his head. No, I'm real. I came back too. My heart dropped. From a different branch, he said. I jumped back seconds before the machine activated in the Cretaceous. I saw what it did. I followed your trail. But why are you here? Because if you destroy this, if you wipe the timeline, it won't fix anything. They're outside of time. They'll start again. Another world. Another age. The purge always comes. The null bomb just buys time. I lowered the weapon. Then what do we do? He stepped closer. We learn. We adapt. We warn. There are others. Survivors in bunkers. Scattered cells. People who saw the signs and hid. We can reach them. I hesitated. What about the fragments? He held up a device I recognized. An advanced temporal harmonizer. Something we hadn't finished designing. I fixed the code. We can stabilize ourselves. It won't be perfect, but it's a start. The vault shook suddenly. The lights dimmed again. Above us in the real world, I felt it. Something had landed. Heavy. Massive. We looked at each other. We're out of time, he said. I turned to the console and placed my hand on the button. Then removed it and walked away. We emerged from the ruins of the lab into a world eerily still, like it was holding its breath. The air felt charged, ionized, as if a lightning storm loomed just over the horizon, but there were no clouds, no wind, just that same impossible shape above us. The object hadn't moved, but something else had. A shaft of violet light had descended from its underside, silent and vast, and now touched down in the forest a few miles away. Trees had begun to decay under its influence. Birds dropped mid-flight. The soil itself was turning black. We watched from a ridgeline above the lab. Me and me. Two roads, one timeline, now cracked and bleeding. "I've seen this before," he said. I turned. "In your branch?" He nodded. "They scan, they sample, they dissect. It's not curiosity, it's protocol. They arrive, they erase. That thing in orbit, it's not a ship, it's a mind." I didn't want to believe it. Not because it was too far-fetched, but because it felt deliberate. Like we were chosen to see this. "What do we do?" I asked. He opened a case he'd carried from the alternate timeline. Inside, the completed harmonizer, modified and augmented with parts that didn't exist in our reality. "First," he said, "we merge." The process was pain incarnate. The harmonizer didn't just fuse memories, it synchronized timelines. Neural imprints, muscle memory, divergent experiences all blended and battled for dominance in my skull. I saw his path, his failures, his successes, the time he tried to destroy the alien's machine. And failed. The time he tried to warn the world and was ignored. The time he tried to kill himself and something stopped him. I understood now. Every version of me carried the burden. Some broke, some ran, but one thing remained constant. We remembered. And we came back. After the merge, I wasn't him. He wasn't me. We were something else. Whole. And for the first time, I felt the thing in the sky see me. Not just watch. Understand. We were a loose thread, a corrupted node in their system. Something unpredictable. And that meant we were dangerous. The light beam began to widen. We ran. Through scorched forest and twitching shadows, we sprinted toward a fallback shelter we'd seen in both timelines, a Cold War-era bunker deep enough to withstand a tactical nuke, rigged with solar shielding and EMP hardening. It wasn't perfect, but it was hardened. And it had something no other site did. An uplink beacon. One of the old fail-safe satellites. A backup route into global communication grids, meant for nuclear command. Repurposed by Koji in both timelines. It was our only way to send a message. We reached it just before the sky cracked open. Literally. The clouds didn't roll in, they peeled back, revealing a second layer of sky behind them, not atmosphere but machinery, like the planet itself was being peeled. The stars blinked out. And something looked down. A silhouette impossible in scale, neither metal nor flesh, both, a god machine. The sky breathed in, and the world shivered. I activated the beacon. It needed 5 minutes to align. Outside, the light was no longer a beam, it was a vacuum, pulling trees upward in slow motion, their trunks twisting as if resisting the call. I watched a Tyrannosaurus, distorted and mutated from another breach point, dragged screaming into the sky, half bones, half flesh, all horror. The world was coming undone. And yet, the beacon pulsed green. Signal locked, message ready. I pressed record. "This is Dr. Adrian Rhodes. If you're receiving this, then time isn't lost. Not completely. I've seen what comes at the end. It isn't fire. It isn't ice. It's them. They don't destroy out of hate, they do it out of function. We're anomalies, deviations, an evolutionary dead end. And like a corrupted file, we are to be deleted. But I've survived. We've survived. That means it's possible. If you find this, don't hide. Adapt. Fight. Remember." The uplink fired the transmission. And the sky blinked. The beam narrowed, paused, adjusted. For the first time, the machine seemed uncertain. We had done it. We had become an error. The moment the broadcast ended, something changed. The air thickened. The sky pulsed. The beam, which had begun to widen into a world-sweeping siphon, suddenly collapsed into a pinpoint of blinding white and vanished, like someone pulling a plug from the planet. The world didn't go back to normal. But it paused. A moment of hesitation, as if the intelligence behind the storm had not anticipated resistance, let alone a message. We had spoken into the void, and it had listened. The world was quiet for 13 hours. That's how long we had before it responded. In that time, the beacon picked up replies, dozens, some from underground military bunkers, others from jury-rigged comm stations on mountaintops, in wastelands, aboard drifting ships. People, survivors. Not many, but enough to matter. Some recognized my name, others didn't, but the one thing they all said again and again was this: we saw them too. Some had experienced time distortions, echoes, the presence of ghost machines. One group in Australia claimed they had killed one of the biomechanical giants and were dissecting its remains. Another reported strange artifacts, small cube-shaped objects that vibrated when near electronic devices. One woman said she'd been dreaming of the creatures her entire life. She called them collectors. Said they come in waves every few million years. Said Earth was due. I stayed underground and relayed what I knew. I sent them files, data, schematics. Even fragments of the harmonizer tech. My new self, merged, fractured, healed, worked without sleeping. No need. My cells felt electrified, metabolizing ideas like fuel. I saw patterns I'd never seen before, and a map of their arrival points. They weren't random. They were testing nodes, sampling locations, strategic extermination routes across evolutionary hotspots, Africa, Asia, North America. The extinction of the dinosaurs wasn't an accident. It was the template. We were next. Then the sky opened again. Not a beam this time, a breach. The clouds split like glass. The object in orbit did not descend. Instead, it birthed something. Dozens of spires, slender, black, metallic, fell like needles into Earth's crust. Where they landed, the land withered. Oceans began to boil. Mountains cracked. Animals convulsed, mutated, died. They weren't just exterminating. They were reformatting the planet. Across the survivors' network, fear turned to resolve. We shared more than just intel now. We shared defiance. And we had a weapon. Time itself. If we couldn't fight them here, we would fight them everywhere. One survivor group had unearthed a partial time displacement engine, ancient, embedded in the ice shelf, alien in origin, possibly a remnant of the last purge. We began to collaborate, rebuild, refactor. A new mission took shape, not to escape the storm, but to enter it. We called ourselves the Fractured Legion, a patchwork army of the broken, the survivors, the echoes who refused to fade. I was their anchor, their map, the man who had seen the first purge and come back. On the 14th day, we launched our first counter-offensive, not against the machines, but against time itself. We opened a gate into the past, not 65 million years this time, but just far enough to before the spires fell, before the reformatting began. We planted a harmonizer, and for 6 minutes the collectors couldn't see us. We made ourselves invisible to their gaze. It was the first win in the first war of time, and it would not be the last. Time is not a straight line. It's not even a circle. It's a snare. A knot pulled tighter with each cycle looped around the same moments again and again, woven so intricately that even the collectors can't escape its gravity. That's what we discovered in the 43rd cycle. Yes, the 43rd. Not of our mission. Of this world's loop. The collectors aren't the architects. They're the cleaners. After the first coordinated harmonizer deployment, we noticed something strange. The sky stopped pulsing. For exactly 9 minutes, the spires froze. The object in orbit dimmed. And in that window, something tried to make contact. Not from space, from beneath. One of the European Legion teams, embedded under what used to be CERN, detected a vibration from miles below the crust. Seismic instruments tuned to high-frequency bands picked up a pattern, deliberate, rhythmic. Try a message went, "Hello." That was all it said. Once. In every language at once. Then it stopped. I thought I was losing my mind. But I remembered something, a scrap from Koji's most buried archive, a theory he'd never published. If time resists manipulation, it is not because of entropy, it is because it has a will. He believed there was a core, an origin point in space-time that was alive, or semi-conscious, a relic, or a being, perhaps both. We found it 3 days later. Deep beneath the Marianas Trench, far below crush depth, Legion divers found a shaft, metallic, smooth, humming. It went deeper than any tectonic fault. They sent in a probe. It burned out instantly. But before it failed, it transmitted one frame of video. Not rock, not magma. A chamber, perfectly spherical, containing a heart, massive, still, cracked down the center, and around it symbols, the same ones etched into the collector's machines, but older. So much older. We weren't the first civilization to reach time travel. We weren't the second. We were the latest in a long line of species who tried to break time, and failed. The core beneath the earth wasn't just a relic. It was a prison, and something inside had died trying to break free. Or maybe it was still dreaming. That's when I began to hear it. A voice, not from a speaker, not in my head, in the air around me. A whisper that followed me from moment to moment. You left the door open. They came through. But you're not too late. I thought it was hallucination. Until the other roads, my former echo, the one I merged with, heard it too. Then we all began to hear it. The survivors, the harmonized, the ones touched by time. The voice had no source, but it had intent. It called itself the loop mind. We theorized it was the first intelligence to ever manipulate time. So advanced, it became entangled with the fabric of reality itself. And when it tried to escape entropy, it created the first break. The first collector response. They arrived not as invaders, but as a failsafe. A virus scan. And humanity. Humanity was just the latest strain of the original era. We weren't the targets of extermination. We were the symptom. I stood at the edge of the Pacific cliffside that night and stared into the storm-choked sky. The collector ship was still there, but the stars behind it were beginning to move. No, not stars. Eyes. Something was waking in the dark between the timelines. Something older than time. Something watching both sides of the war. The moment I stepped outside the shield dome, I vanished. Not physically. My body remained, heartbeat, breath, trembling skin, but the world around me twisted like film burning in reverse. The sky split down the center. Time fractured. And the voice returned. You have seen the edges. Now step through. I fell without moving. Sank into nothingness, into something deeper than space, colder than the void. I did not black out. I opened. When I awoke, I was standing on a surface that had no texture, no color, no heat, yet it supported me, held me. Above, below, around, vastness. Not empty, not full. It simply was. And then from the vastness something coalesced. A shape, abstract, shifting. Neither alien nor machine, neither male nor female, not even humanoid. Just presence. When it spoke, it wasn't words. It was understanding, poured into my thoughts like liquid light. You are the echo that resisted. You are the recursion that remembered. We watched. We waited. You reached back when you should have ended. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My tongue was dead weight. My body wasn't my body anymore. Then came a vision. I saw Earth, not just in my time, But 100 million years ago, then 200, a billion, always the same pattern. A rise, a reach, a crack, and then erasure. Every cycle is a question, the loop mind said. Every extinction a correction. Until you. Images poured into my mind. The collectors had evolved not as life forms, but as tools, self-replicating time guardians created by a civilization that no longer existed. Their purpose? Maintain sequence integrity. But the loop mind, it had been their creator. And now it had changed. We learned, it said. We grew. We are not sure anymore. Then came the offer. It didn't use words, but I knew. It would give me access, a rewrite, a single recursive loop seeded at the origin point of my timeline, one that would change not only the fate of Earth, but all timelines. I would carry its code, its DNA of logic and possibility, back with me. I could erase the extinction event, erase the storm, erase them. But there was a cost. I would not survive it. Not as me. My body would be restructured. My mind would fracture across all versions of myself. I would become a carrier wave, a ghost encoded in causality, no longer a man, but a message. A warning. A weapon. I would lose my name. Lose Adrian Rhodes. And yet, I accepted. Not because I wanted to be a hero, but because I had already done it. I saw myself over and over in every loop, making the same choice, becoming the same thing. A ripple that outlives the rock that made it. And then the loop mind said, "What?" "Go." And I fell again. Back into the world. The shield dome burst as I returned. The legions scrambled to secure me, thinking I'd been abducted or killed. But they stopped when they saw my eyes. Something in me was different. I wasn't speaking. But every machine in the lab began to light up. Codes pouring from my skin, harmonics syncing. The beacon pulsed. Across the world, harmonizers activated. The sky trembled. And for the first time since the purge began, the collectors stopped. I don't sleep anymore. I don't eat. I don't breathe the way I used to. I'm still here, still me, but only barely. I exist more in circuits now than in flesh. I pass through devices like wind through glass. When I speak, it's not from my mouth. It's from everything, and everyone hears me. The signal spread faster than anything we'd built before. Not radio, not data, something deeper, etched into the quantum noise between atoms. The moment I activated, it cascaded across the Legion's remnants, bouncing through relay pylons, makeshift towers, harmonizer arrays, still clinging to rooftops in broken cities. Wherever the pulse reached, the storm stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Clouds froze, lightning halted mid-strike. The collector spires dimmed. Some even began to retract. But not all of them. Several resisted. Especially the oldest ones, the ones embedded beneath ancient layers of Earth. Ones that hadn't landed in this cycle but had slept through eons, dormant since the last purge. We called them anchors. They were rooted in time, fixed, untouchable, unless we found a way to untie them from the loop. Koji would have called it temporal surgical rewriting. I call it the unmaking. We isolated one anchor site near what used to be the Black Sea, a spire taller than Everest, invisible to normal vision, but vibrating with energy detectable across the multiverse. I went there in person. Not because I had to, because it called me. Standing at its base was like standing next to the core of a star. I reached out, and the world peeled away. Time collapsed inward. I saw every version of myself, every Adrian Rhodes that had ever been or could be, merging into this single moment. One by one we stepped forward, and together we touched the anchor. It unraveled, not exploded, not shattered. It simply stopped existing, as if it had never been. And in its place, the earth healed. The sky turned blue, the soil rehydrated, insects returned, birds sang. For the first time in decades, life bloomed. The Legion wept. I stood in the center of it all, no longer a man but a consequence, and I knew what had to come next. There were 6 more anchors, each one tied to a different fragment of the loop mine's original purge design. To destroy them, I'd have to travel outside linear time completely, beyond the present, beyond the future, to the last moment before the first moment. And once I did, there'd be no coming back. And I told the Legion to prepare, to record, to remember me. Even when I'm gone. The final anchor wasn't on Earth. It never had been. It existed before Earth, before the planets, before the stars, before even time itself had congealed into something measurable. I had to go there. To Event Zero. The origin point. The moment the loop mind fractured itself into machines and protocols, into systems and simulations that would keep the universe clean. I stood inside the beacon core as the Legion activated the last harmonizer chain. Their voices were solemn. Some saluted, the others cried. One simply said, "Goodbye, Adrian." I didn't respond. I didn't want to, because it felt like the last time. The beacon cracked space, split it, unraveled the boundaries of causality. The sky around the dome inverted, clouds folding into oceans, gravity unraveling like string, and I stepped through. I left the universe. There is no language for where I arrived. It wasn't darkness, it wasn't void, it was unwritten. Reality hadn't happened here yet. This was the software before the boot, the hum before the big bang. And floating at its heart, it, the first anchor, not a spire this time. Not even a machine. A concept, a twisting, shimmering lattice of logic and law, a seed of enforcement, a virus embedded in the birth of everything, and wrapped around it, dying and rebirthing infinitely. The loop mind. It saw me, not with eyes, not even with thought. It recognized me. You are not supposed to be here. You are the fracture. You are the ghost, the recursion, the echo, the weapon. It did not ask why I came. It knew. It showed me. Every version of Earth, wiped clean. Every civilization reset. Every cycle corrected. It asked me a question. Would you replace me? That was the price. If I destroyed the first anchor, if I killed Event Zero, then something else had to fill the gap. Something had to keep the universe from collapsing. Not as a god, as a caretaker, a steward of reality. It would mean eternity. Alone. No form, no voice, no body. Only watching, guiding, preserving. Never again becoming Adrian Rhodes. And I said, Frey, yes. I reached into the anchor and unwrote it. I erased the law that demanded extinction. I severed the pulse that called the collectors. I closed the loop. And in its place, I stood. Not as a man, not even as memory, but as the new loop mind. And I whispered across all timelines into all ears. Live, and never fear the storm again. The skies were quiet. For the first time in human memory, perhaps in any memory, there were no collectors, no storms, no pulsing harmonics rippling through the ionosphere. Just clouds. Soft, ordinary. A bird flew overhead, a real one, not a drone, not a relic of a simulation. A creature of feathers, breath, blood, and song. Below, the world healed. Centuries passed. The Legion became legend. The truth of the storm became myth, then memory, then something even quieter, tucked away in the minds of historians and philosophers, The kinds of people who believed in things they couldn't touch. But some still remembered his name. Not always aloud, not always clearly, but in whispers. Adrian Rhodes, the one who went too far back, the one who saw the truth, the one who stayed behind. On a beach somewhere near what was once the Yucatan Peninsula, a child dug in the sand. Her parents watched from a distance, lounging under a sunshade made of solar fibre and wood. The child's fingers hit something hard, not a rock, something smoother, fused. She pulled it free, held it up to the sun. It was a tooth, or at least it looked like one. Curved, heavy, with edges etched in unnatural patterns. Not dinosaur, not human, but both? The child turned it in her hand. The sand at her feet vibrated. Just slightly. She didn't hear words, but she felt them. A pulse, a thought, a presence. I'm still here, just watching, keeping time safe. She smiled, put the fossil in her pack, and ran back towards the waves. Somewhere beyond time, a ripple passed through the void. A being with no name, no form, no beginning or end, felt the world turning, and smiled without lips, watched without eyes, loved without fear. The storm was gone, but the guardian remained, forever. And now it was our time to live, to grow, to remember, to never make the same mistake again.